Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra metagame breakdown based on the mobalytics weekly data dump. For anyone that's new to the series, we're going to take a look at the top 5 most played decks last week, as well as the top 5 highest win rate decks last week, to see what is popular and what is doing well, to give you a better idea of the metagame and either what deck to pick or what decks to attack and prepare for. Before we do so, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future content. And before we dive into today's data, I want to briefly introduce you to today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN, one of the leading virtual private network providers out there. A virtual private network keeps your data secure and yourself anonymous while using the internet. NordVPN comes with super fast servers, allows you to unlock your favorite entertainment websites like Netflix. They provide a 30-day money-back guarantee. They also have an included cybersecurity suite, which acts as an ad blocker to boot. They don't lock any of your data, provide a 24/7 customer support, and you can use it on up to 6 simultaneous connections, so one account covers most or all of your electronic devices. And most importantly, they don't have any bandwidth limit, so you can use it non-stop without it getting throttled, which is particularly important for heavy users like us. It also won multiple awards and comes highly recommended by top technology experts. So if you're still surfing online without a VPN, now is the time to change that. Get NordVPN now, 70% off for a 3-year plan, including 1 month extra for free using the code ManuS or the personalized link in the description down below. And now on to today's content. Alright, so I tried to fix the issue with my facecam covering parts of the spells and some of the spell heavier decks, so I hope you guys like the fix that I chose. I just kind of tried to shrink stuff a bit, add some similarly colored background, because moving the facecam is not really a great option, makes it kind of weirdly out of place and stuff like that. So yeah, let me know in the comments how you like this improvement. I'm just trying to listen to your guys' feedback and then find a good solution to the issue that works for everyone and looks good. Alright, so 5th most played deck this week is Elusives. They made it back in, although they suffered a lot in win rate again. I've been doing really well the last couple of weeks again, but this week they're doing really poorly. They dipped below 54% win rate. So seems they have a really hard time right now. I can see the Corinna deck having so much removal that it's hard for Elusives to kind of really get through there. They're still most likely very well positioned against the Bannerman decks, but seem to struggle against the Ezreal decks and the Corinna decks, I would imagine. Anyway, this is 5th most played deck this week. I'll kept the ascending order to make it a bit more suspenseful, and people have been mentioning in the comments that they liked it. Alright, on to number 4. 4th most popular deck is Karma Control, the Shadow Isles Karma Control. Noteworthy here is that the majority seem to have moved back to the traditional Karma Control, away from the Spiders bundle. Like the most popular list, as you can see in the data down below in the description, has been the old Thresh Karma list again, although the sample size is not that big and the win rate actually was below 50% at like 49%. So yeah, I don't know, maybe there were just a couple of variations among the like spider versions, and the spider version is still better because the overall win rate of the archetype is not that bad. It's like about 5% higher. It's like 54.3%. So maybe it's still that the spider versions are doing better. They're just more split among versions or something like that. So not 100% sure. I haven't played the archetype a lot myself, so keep that in mind. Try out. This specific list seemed to not be doing that well. The archetype overall has been doing fine, but not great, so might not be the best time to play the deck anyway. But if you do, despite this being the most popular version, the data implies that this is by far not the best version. So the best version might still be the Spiders variants, but we don't have a representative list for this week for that so far. So yeah, let's move on to number 3. Number 3, we have the good old Karma Ezreal combo control, a mainstay since the balance patch in the metagame. Not very surprising. It's also like very popular, over 1,000 games. Quite the jump from the last one, which was notably below 650 games. So a big gap here between sort of the most popular decks and the runner-up, so to speak. But it makes sense. This is one of the tier 1 decks, I would say, and it also has a tier 1 popularity. The list is pretty established at this point. This list is pretty representative. I'm a bit skeptical of the used cask salesman, and if that is really better than, say, another Get Excited and a healing potion. I would question that, and I quite like those. Like, there is other Ezreal decks like Draven Ezreal where the health potion comes in handy, or just against aggressive decks. And Get Excited is particularly good in a deck with Karma, where Karma fuels Get Excited, or just gives you the avenue of just burning people out with Mystic Shot and Get Excited with a Karma on level 10. And yeah, Cask Salesman is meant as a way to just kind of generate some chump blockers, basically punish the opponent for developing, which probably mostly comes up against like Bannerman decks right now. And not sure if that is even necessary. The matchup should be alright, but I have not played Ezreal Karma that much to have a like definitive opinion on that matchup, especially because I actually don't see Bannerman that much in Master right now from what I faced in my games, but it clearly seems to be pretty popular, as we will see in a moment. So let's move on to the second most popular deck. Second most popular deck is in fact still Bannerman midrange, not very surprising. We still have the Deny Splash as the most popular variant. This particular list that's the most popular this week has 3 Deny and cut back onto prismatic barriers to fit the second Deny, add a third Deny, and a singleton Detain, which may or may not be an improvement. It's pretty marginal. I quite like the prismatic barriers, especially because you can play them with just your spell mana, which is nice. But I can certainly see the appeal of 3 Denies between Corinnas, a lot of Ruinations, stuff like that. Just not sure about the 1 Detain, but it doesn't seem terrible, and it's solid like in the mirror or against They Who Endure out of Spider stacks and stuff like that. So overall it seems like a pretty decent adjustment. Just test it, see how you like it, and mess around with it. And the most popular deck of the last week is Corinna Control. Not super surprising after the high win rate that it had last week, where it really ran away with things, and it just seems like a really powerful control deck, the best control deck by far in the game right now. It is super popular at over 1,400 games. As you notice, the numbers are noticeably smaller than a couple of weeks ago, because we're kind of at the rear end of the set 1 play cycle, so the appeal is just not that big anymore, especially without any competitive incentives, given that it is a beta still. The interest naturally drops off, but we're already in the spoiler season for set 2 and the announcement of release, and I'm pretty sure once release and the new set, the new cards dropped, these numbers are going to skyrocket again, and we'll see like multiple thousands of games for one archetype. Although there might not even be master data for the first week after release, because we will head into the first proper ranked season, which will probably come with a reset, either a soft reset or a hard reset. We'll see about that. I would guess or hope they do a soft reset, but we'll see how they go about it. Anyway, Corinna Control, not a whole lot changed here. This list has made some minor adjustments that I don't hate actually. It cut the Atrocity and a Corinna for 2 Progress Day, which is pretty nice for some extra drawing power, and swapped the 3rd Grasp for the 3rd Static Shock that some lists didn't have, which honestly seems a bit questionable not to have the 3 shocks in a deck like this. The cycling is just really good. It pairs well with your Spider splash damage and your Veils and stuff like that, and Valfies. There's just a lot of chip shot damage here and there, where sort of makes sense to have Static Shock, given that it's also free in terms of resources because it replaces itself. All right, from here we're gonna dive into the top 5 highest win rate decks. So it almost looks like we didn't really change a slide, but we did, since the most popular deck is also the 5th highest win rate deck, which is still decent. Like, we had worse cases where the most popular deck didn't even make it into the top 5 highest win rate, so making it in at the bottom at almost 59%, still pretty good. As I expected and predicted, win rate went down from last week 65.5 or something, but 59% as a top dog, most popular deck everyone is gunning for is really, really good. Proving once again that this deck is very much for real and a legit top deck, I would say. And yeah, the win rate stabilizing at over 58% is pretty good for that. 4th highest win rate deck, surprisingly enough, is Enduring Spiders. It didn't quite make it into the most popular decks this time around, but yeah, it's still doing pretty well. Almost 60% win rate is pretty good. If we look at the sample size, it is just above 500 games, so it is actually pretty close behind Elusives in terms of popularity, so it's not a big difference there. So it's kind of 6/7 place in popularity, but the difference between 7, 6, and 5th is like very negligible in terms of amount of games. So yeah, this is the version that is still the most popular. We had this one, I think, 2 weeks ago already, so not a big change here. This seems to be the go-to version. Still not a big fan of the Omen Hawk. The deck just is not super unit dense, and some of those units, it doesn't even matter buffing too much, like an Aristocrat or Iceveil Archer. Those are just units that buffing doesn't really do a whole lot. Then buffing They Who Endure does even less. So the good things to hit basically are like Skidera and the champions, and mostly like the non-Tryndamere champions, because hitting Tryndamere also not that big of a deal. So yeah, Omen Hawk, not sold on it. But the core, a bit more controlling approach here seems to pay off. Only 1 atrocity, 2 ruinations to sort of catch people off guard if they don't expect it in this archetype. Overall, taking a bit more mid-range controlling approach over the more proactive, aggressive takes. But yeah, I would really like to see something else than Omen Hawk here. I just don't like that card in that deck at all. I think you want to be like super unit dense and have a lot of units where the +1/+1 actually does something to notably improve how the unit lines up against stuff. Alright, so on to number 3. Number 3 is the Karma Azrael. 60.2% is a really good win rate for a deck that is so popular and so targeted in a way. People are really aware of it and really making sure they can keep up with it, and the deck is still doing really, really well. So very deservingly a top deck in popularity and win rate, and one of the best decks you can be playing right now, arguably. And I'm not too surprised. Like, I played the deck a bit, I played against it a bunch, and it just feels really good. So not surprised at all here. And as I already mentioned, used Cask Salesman, a bit skeptical. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of flex slots in this deck anymore. Next we have Bannerman Midrange at 61.6%. The Deny version was sitting at like 60%, so they're both pretty high. This one was a bit higher. I didn't want to put both in because they're so similar. This is just like House Spiders instead of Denies, and this one basically cut the 3 prismatic barriers for the 3 House Spiders, and actually it cut the 3 prismatic barriers for 2 Vanguard Redeemer and a Purify, and it cut the 3 Denies for the House Spiders. I'm surprised that this is doing better. I guess there are enough matchups where it seems to matter. Like, Deny really handles like the biggest problem card potentially for the deck, which is Ruination, while House Spider just makes the deck curve a little better and a bit more like consistent at its board impact. I've never been very impressed or super happy with House Spider over Deny, since Deny is fixing a glaring weakness in the deck, I would say, while House Spider is just kind of making the deck curve a bit better. But the stats imply that I might be wrong. I mean, the discrepancy isn't that big, so it's not conclusive, but it might at least be worth trying, and maybe I'll do that on one of the future streams to see how this feels, and if the deck actually is better against Ruination decks than I think it is without Deny. So yeah, overall Bannerman, both versions doing really well, so still a great deck in popularity and performance. And it's nice to see that we are much closer at this point in which decks are popular and which decks are doing well. That is an indicator that people really catching on and things are sort of figured out, and people don't just play decks that they perceive as strong, they play decks that are actually strong and doing well, and that kind of is what should be the case in like a evolved, progressed metagame like this, when the deck is when the format is existing for a while, that people should really not overplay decks that just do mediocre in terms of performance. And it's nice to see that things are kind of settling in that regard, and the community is catching on to playing the decks that actually win a lot rather than decks that don't. Anyway, on to the most successful deck of the last week. It's surprisingly actually Ezreal Draven, 62.3%. It technically didn't quite clear the bar that I have set for this at 496 games, but I felt like 4 games too few is not a reason to exclude a deck that is clearly reasonably popular and doing exceptionally well. 62.3%, really strong. Noteworthy though, this specific version, which was the most popular one, actually only had like a 54% win rate. Maybe there's not that much of a difference in versions, and this sample size just had like a low roll, or actually there might be something to it that running, say, 3 Blade Edges, only 1 Culling Strike, and only like 2 Jury Rig might not be the right direction. Maybe it is better to stick to the more traditional version that had something like 2nd Culling Strike, 3rd Jury Rig, and 1 Blade Edge, for example. And I can see that like Blade's Edge is kind of marginal and hit or miss, and if you look at the decks we have looked at, there are not a lot of units that die to 1 damage, so 3 Blades Edge seems a bit excessive unless you see like a lot of Nox, PNZ, burn style aggro decks with a lot of like 2/1s and stuff. So I'm not sure if this like seemingly minor difference is a big contributing factor here, but it's telling that this specific version actually has an 8% lower win rate over 161 games than the archetype overall, given that 161 games is also about 1/3 of the overall sample size of the games. So yeah, might want to keep that in mind. But otherwise, this seems like a potentially even better Ezreal choice than the Karma Ezreal. I'm honestly not entirely sure why, not too familiar with the subtle differences in matchups of these decks. If anyone has a theory, then let me know in the comments. Overall, the Karma Ezreal list is a bit slower and a bit more geared towards the later end of the game than upfront, but also has a lot more power to it, while not really losing that much early game either. It is a bit rougher at board presence early on, or especially at Ezreal progress, since having the Arachnoid sentries certainly helps Ezreal progress a bunch, while the other list only has like 2 Yones and they're happening pretty late, and it has a bit fewer things that target. And while Karma is a powerful card in its own right, it is a bit of its own plan that doesn't always contribute as much to Ezreal, while Progress Day has immediate impact on or synergy with Ezreal, because your deck is built with Ezreal in mind, and drawing 3 cards from your deck is more likely to get your cards to help level up your Ezreal, while Karma cards may or may not do that, or Karma might just die and she doesn't get you a spell at all and stuff like that. So as a straight up Ezreal deck, this might be the deck that sort of supports Ezreal a bit better than the Karma Ezreal deck, but the Karma Ezreal deck has the overall higher power level and might be a bit more consistency as a deck in general and not as dependent on Ezreal, would be my take here. So yeah, that's the current metagame. It's nice to see that there's a lot less discrepancy between, as I said, popularity and win rate. Even the decks that do really well made it into the not even top 10, could almost say like top 8 of the most popular decks. Like Ezreal Draven, for example, comes in 8th place in terms of popularity, right before numbers start to really drop off. Like the 9th deck is pretty close behind still, but the 10th deck is really dropping off below 400 games and so on. So things are really tightening and cleaning up. Alright, let me know in the comments what you think of the metagame right now. How do you like it? Is it enjoyable to play? How hungry are you for new content? And so on and so forth. And yeah, if you enjoy the content, leave a like, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future content. If you want to help support your favorite content creators on YouTube, there's always a cheap and easy way, which is whitelist YouTube on your adblock or turn off your adblock for YouTube. That really helps a lot already. And make sure to check out our sponsor in the description down below if you want to further help support the stream and do yourself something good as well. Alright, that's again for this time. I'm your host ManuS. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.